Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the key tactical themes in Switzerland's 1-1 draw against Wales. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Switzerland starting in a 3-4-1-2 and Wales starting in a 4-3-3. So first, we're going to focus on the tactical issues that Wales presented to Switzerland, how they were able to overcome them, and then we're going to focus on how Wales were able to get back into the game. So first, we'll focus on the system battle across the pitch, and what you end up getting from a 3-4-1-2 against a 4-3-3 is that the Welsh would have to concede the battle up front. Moore was up against all three center backs, and what you ended up seeing was that there were times where James and Bale would step out to Akanji and Elvedi and look to block off the passing lanes into the wing backs, but if the Swiss defense was able to get the ball to Mbabu or Rodriguez, then James and Bale would harry back to cover those markers. If they couldn't get out to them in time, then that would force Davies or Roberts to step out to Rodriguez and Mbabu. And the only real threat that they witnessed in those wider areas was the movement of Shaqiri. Because when you look in that midfield zone, it's 3v3 across the pitch. Ramsey and Morel were stepping to Freuler and Xhaka, and there were even times where we witnessed more stepping towards Freuler or Xhaka depending on which one dropped off deeper. That would often see Xhaka looking to drift into an inside left position to ensure that he wasn't pressed out of the game. But for the most part, Morel and Ramsey were applying that pressure higher up the pitch with help from their center forward. That leaves Allen with Shaqiri, and what we often saw from Shaqiri was that he was looking to make runs across the center backs into that space in behind the fullbacks, and that ultimately forced the center backs to track his movement, and from those positions, he didn't cause them any problems. Therefore, when you assess the battles across the pitch, if the wing backs are closed out by the fullbacks, and then you have that midfield battle 3v3, you have to question how the Swiss were going to be able to create their chances. The center backs were given the time and space to push forward to serve as creators, and their main route of attack was looking to shift the ball out to Rodriguez down that left-hand side. If they weren't playing cross-field switches towards Rodriguez, the only other option that we witnessed was Embolo looking to drop off deeper to get the ball in that midfield zone. But whenever Embolo looked to push forward, that's where you would see Allen stepping tight towards him to apply pressure and force the striker to play the ball backwards. The other common theme that we witnessed was that if Rodriguez could get on the ball in that left channel, or we ended up seeing Freuler or Xhaka receive the ball in space ahead of the midfield bank, they were looking to switch the ball out to Mbabu, who was looking to make runs in beyond Davies at the back post, and he was causing the Welsh backline a few issues. Therefore, when we focus on how the Swiss were able to create high-quality chances, initially we did state that Embolo struggled to impact the game when he dropped off deeper to receive the ball in midfield zones due to Joe Allen tracking his movement in those central areas. So the biggest issue that the Swiss were encountering was that when Shaqiri was shifting out into those wider zones, a center back could pick him up, and Embolo was dropping off into the position that Shaqiri should be in, and that saw Allen stick tightly towards the attacker. But the key to the second half was that Shaqiri was now dropping off into the midfield zone to drag Allen out of position, and that allowed Akanji to step forward to bypass the midfield on several occasions to place Seferovic and Embolo in 2v2 situations where they'd be able to drag out the center backs while having enough time and space to turn and break forward towards goal. Here you see Akanji stepping forward with the ball, and what he has ahead of him is Allen stepping towards Shaqiri, Ramsey looking to track back as you have Embolo free in the halfway circle. Akanji ends up playing the ball across Allen, and it falls into the path of Embolo, and when Ramsey tries to apply pressure, he slips and falls, and that allows Embolo to run freely at the Swiss backline. Embolo ends up sliding the ball across Davies into the path of Mbabu, but he instantly wants the ball back ahead of the box because he is free in that zone. But when the right wing back plays the ball back to Embolo, he's instantly closed down, and his shot ends up being blocked. Following Elvedi sliding the ball across James to Mbabu, Davies does a good job of sticking tight towards him. You have Ramsey tracking the movement of Freuler, and focus on Shaqiri dragging Allen towards the left touchline, and that's where you see Rodon tracking the movement of Seferovic. and Babu ends up clipping a first-time ball over those two Welsh players, and it falls into the path of Embolo, who backs in towards Mepham, and he waits for Seferovic to make the run across Rodon into right half space, and that's where he lays it off to his strike partner, but from that position he fires a first-time effort wide of the net. Now you can see Akanji looking to slide the ball across Bale, while Morel, Allen, and Ramsey are stepping towards the Swiss back three. Akanji ends up bypassing Morel and Allen to find Embolo dragging out Mepham, but now what you end up seeing was that he's able to backheel the ball between the defender's legs, and that allows Embolo to break free in a 2v2 battle. As Embolo breaks down that left channel, what you end up seeing is that Seferovic is occupying Rodon, and now there's a gap for Embolo to break into as Roberts looks to track back. That ultimately results in Embolo breaking in between Mepham and Roberts, and you could see Mbabu making a free run into right half space as Seferovic drags Davies central. Embolo ends up carrying the ball in towards the box, and he takes 4 defenders with him, and that allows him to slide the ball into an unmarked Mbabu in right half space. But from that position, he ends up being closed down by 2 defenders, and he side foots his effort wide of the net. You can look to a time where Akanji carries the ball beyond Bale, and you can witness Morel and Ramsey stepping toward Xhaka and Freuler. Akanji ends up splitting both Welsh midfielders, and he slides it across Allen into the path of Seferovic, pulling out Mepham, and that's where you end up seeing Embolo free in that midfield zone, dropping off Rodon. When Seferovic slides the ball to Embolo, that's where you now see the 1v1 battle in place, and Embolo ends up taking it across Rodon, and he ends up carrying the ball in between both center backs, and with Seferovic unable to apply support, Embolo ends up carrying the ball between both of the center backs towards the box, and from that position he ends up forcing the keeper into a quality save that results in his opening goal. Meanwhile, when we focus on Wales, the only legitimate attacking threat that they posed within that same time period was through Dan James breaking into space down the left channel, whether it be in behind Mbabu or Elvedi to run at the Swiss defense. So when we break down how they were able to get back into the game, it all stemmed from a tactical shift from the Swiss. With hopes of taking control of the game, they shifted to a 3-5-2 by bringing on Zakaria for Shaqiri, and what we ended up seeing there was now they did have 3 midfielders in that central area, with Zakaria and Freuler operating as the shuttlers, and the 3v3 battle in that midfield zone still persisted. But with Shaqiri unavailable, they were now robbed of a number 10 floating between the lines when they looked to break on the counterattack, given the fact that Wales would now have to push for a goal by pushing their fullbacks into attacking positions. That was the downfall, because what happens in that 3-5-2 now is that when Davies and Roberts push forward, Zakaria and Freuler have to shift out to close them down, and it ultimately left the Swiss forward line isolated up front, as Shaqiri's movement was crucial to Seferovic and Embolo dropping off deeper to receive the ball freely. On the other hand, Wales also shifted their system by moving to more of a 4-2-3-1 with Morel and Allen deeper, and that allowed Aaron Ramsey to operate in a number 10 role to push forward to help more in attack. In that zone, you ended up now seeing Allen and Morel against Freuler and Zakaria, and Ramsey ensured that Xhaka couldn't dictate the tempo of the game from those deeper positions. But the only real shift that we saw from Wales besides Ramsey being able to break into the box with more was Gareth Bale now dropped off deeper ahead of the midfield bank, and on several occasions in that second half, we ended up seeing Bale looking to play cross-field passes out to James so that he could get into 1v1s with Mbabu or Elvedi, which made complete sense as he was Wales' most dangerous player on the pitch. And those crossfield passes from Bale to James ultimately placed Wales in a position to get the equalizer. Here you see Bale ahead of Freuler and Rodriguez near the halfway line, and he looks to switch the ball out to James and he places him in a 1v1 with Mbabu. In the build-up to Wales' equalizer, it's Bale receiving the ball ahead of the midfield bank, specifically Freuler, and he's looking to switch the ball out towards Dan James, positioned at the left touchline, and that's to pull out Mbabu. When James receives the ball, that's where you see Ramsey in an advanced position dropping deeper to pull out Elvedi, and Davies is looking to make an underlapping run beyond Zakaria. James plays the ball into Ramsey, and he instantly locates the movement of Davies, and he slides the ball across Elvedi and Zakaria for Davies making a run into left half space. And from that position, Davies is able to clip a ball towards the back post, and that results in Rodriguez nodding it out of play for the corner that leads to the Wales equalizer. So as you can see, tactical adjustments from both managers altered the game, as Shaqiri's movement into midfield created space for Embolo to dominate, while a shift to a 4-2-3-1, along with Bale's crossfield switches, helped Wales rescue a valuable point. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.